Sometimes you see bunny rabbits down here. Oh, hi. It's chilly, it's autumn, it's lovely. This weekend I was supposed to be out taking, and there are stones hidden in the mud. This weekend I was supposed to be taking some students climbing. But this time of year it gets a bit tricky because the weather becomes more unreliable. So it has been chucking it down. It's been far too wet. But the streams are coming back and the mud's coming back. I was thinking about getting out this afternoon, sneaking in some bouldering off the beach because the forecast was looking a bit better, but it keeps changing. I'm not confident about that either now. One of the things I do in my job is I try to talk to students that are performing well in anatomy, as well as the students that aren't performing well, and find out what they're doing, see how that fits with what we know about learning, and share those ideas with other students. So I thought I'd share some of those key ideas with you too. I'm going to try and be brief. Number one, studying anatomy takes a lot of time. I've never found any shortcuts. I found better ways of studying, better ways of learning and memorising, but it always takes a lot of time. There are two planes, low level, going round and round, spoiling my early Sunday morning run. You've seen that. We have a lot of models, so we've got an anatomy lab set up for students to study in. Even when we're teaching, there's a space they can go to study in. So one of the big things that students that do well at anatomy tell me is that they spend a lot of time in the lab working with the models and studying. And they're not just looking at the numbers and looking them up on the book. They are taking photos of the models and then making like flashcards, annotating their images separately. They're making their brains do a little bit of work to work out what it is they're looking at. Do you know what I mean? They're not just making notes, copying things down. They're having to think. They're looking at that structure. They're seeing where it goes to, where it comes from. They're maybe looking at an atlas alongside, that's fine, but they're working out what it is. And that cements understanding and deeper learning. Some people find anatomy easy. They've probably got a really strong spatial ability, and those people probably can do a lot of studying from textbooks pretty easily. But most students that do well tell me that they work with other students a lot. They use the language, they talk to each other, they make the sounds, you know, because it's a language. The more you practice it, the better you get, the better your memory is. And they error check each other. You know, if they're not sure if something's right, they go and look it up. And if you're working with other students, well, you can do little mini teaching sessions. You can teach each other. There's no better way of learning than teaching. I guess those are the main ones. Anatomy study takes a lot of time, even if you're good at it. Try and be as 3D as you can. If you can get in the lab and be physically 3D, even better. Make your brain do a little work. Active learning is more effective, and work with other people. Use the language, teach and learn from each other. I still have some of those experiences I remember when I was first learning with other people, where I was, you know, error corrected and stuff. And the other thing is that something the students that don't do so well tell me is that, well, okay, medicine's tricky, right? You've got to balance all these different subjects, the amount of time you have for everything. And when they're doing okay in anatomy, they're putting a lot of time in, but sometimes they have to take time away from anatomy to spend more time on other subjects, and they do see their scores come down. So it is very time associated. It's like most learning, right? The more time you put into it, the more you'll get out. You can be efficient, you can learn in good ways, but there are very few actual shortcuts. Final tip I tend to take for granted, but if you are struggling conceptually or finding something difficult, speak to a tutor. They can make things a lot quicker if you get them to puzzle out your difficulties, explain things to you. Have I talked about this before? I feel like I've talked about this before. I talk about this sort of thing all the time, it's my job, right? Sneaking in a bit of bouldering, swapping my strength workout for a bouldering workout, which is a good thing to do every now and then. Breaks up your routine, more specific strength, not as specific anyway. Pros and cons, but it's always nice to be able to get on the rock at this time of year. It is going to rain, believe it or not. The sun is out, it's bright, but you can hear Kim is beeping away, metal detecting.
Mostly bits of aluminium.
Even the boulder's wet, so there are some key bits that are wet, but it doesn't really matter. None of this is very hard. It's just a good workout if you do it for an hour. Lots of chalk, and if I slip off, well, you know, bouldering and it starts raining, not a problem. Grab the bags, go back to the van. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, halfway up a route, particularly if you're on trad and it starts raining, well, that's no fun for anybody. Bouldering is more fun than a strength workout. Yeah, no, it is, isn't it? Yeah. I remembered another tip. So this isn't one that good students like particularly tell me about, but this is one that I often recommend to all sorts of students, and one that's come about from working with a lot of students who struggle. Okay, so right, you know how there's this memory method of creating this crazy story. So if you wanted to memorize 52 cards in a pack, as you go through it you make up the craziest, maddest story that you can about each card. The two of diamonds ran off with the wife of the ace of spades, and you just make it very visual, and the madder and probably the ruder, and you know, the easier it is then for you to recall those cards. That's how they do those tricks, and they practice that. It's not like you just do it and it's magical and it works. You practice it, and this is memory, and this is what we're dealing with, right, with learning. So, and because what we're doing most of the time in learning anatomy is that we are training people who are going to work in healthcare, I say don't just learn the anatomy like the textbook anatomy. Think about the patient, think about the person, so you can make up, either in your mind or write them down, you can make up a case, a clinical case, and you can give it as much detail and as embellishment as you like. Name the person, give them a huge backstory, whatever, but you use the same tricks to try to memorize that say somebody, they've got, I don't know, it doesn't have to be realistic, it can be completely mad. Somebody fell off their mountain bike and got stabbed by a spike here, and they punctured the brachial artery just before it split into the two arteries, and you were able to stop that bleeding by going further up and closing the brachial artery there. But more importantly, they damaged the median nerve, and as a result they lost the strength of grip, and they lost the ability to oppose their thumb and thumb move, whatever. Do you see what I mean though? You make up a case, a person, a story, you link the anatomy to that, the function of the anatomy to that, and it makes it so much easier to recall all of that. That's the theory anyway. And a lot of exam questions tend to be based in cases. Just saying that sort of thing comes up, and when you're working, where you're going to be working with these anyway. That's an extra tip. Usually I get students that are doing the work, putting the work in, but really struggling to remember and apply their anatomy, and in many cases it works quite well. A lot of beeping going on, not a lot of finding, lots of bits of aluminium, she said.